So I'm introducing one of the projects that we got funded, joint between Durham University, where I am, with UKAA and with LSST. Here we are. So, and we're looking at federated data movement. At least that's what we call it. We had to get federated in the title somewhere, didn't we? So we're basically looking at large-scale data movement. List of the people who are kind of working on the project is there. I should have put some more logos on, but I didn't. I always forget the logos. Anyway, I did remember to move the Excalibur logo because that's no longer a thing, is it? Right. So data movement at scale. You think, well, it's a solved problem, isn't it? You know, we've been doing it for years. You know, possibly yes, it's a solved problem for IT professionals, but definitely not for users. And we all know that the UK DRI, digital research infrastructure, is linked by, the Janet network, state of the art, great connectivity all over the south of England. Not quite so good as you move up north. But anyway, and we've got, and UK institutions also have this cutting edge data storage and data analysis services. We've even got as far as putting a web link up for the project. So, we have actually had project meetings. So we have started, we feel we're doing well. So if you look at the users, if you ask a user, user comes up to you and they've got a petabyte of data they need to use, how are they going to do that? Well, most users sit there, scratch their heads and think, oh, I'll just SCP it, that'll work. And then they try that and they exercise and they look a bit further and they sort of Google around a bit and they think, oh, rsync, that's the tool to use. So they start rsyncing stuff. If they're really advanced users, they might know about tools like Globus or something like that. Depending on their pedagogy, they might think about using rclone. They might look at all these things and think, it's too complicated. Can you stick a disk in the post for us? And you laugh. But twice this calendar year, that's happened to me. Someone said, can you, if I send you a disk, can you copy the data onto it? So, a couple of times we've done that, which, actually, could you send it faster by carrier pigeon? You probably could, actually, a few USB, yeah. And so that's kind of the state of the art. And a few users, I imagine, think, oh, it's too hard, I won't bother. And then their research suffers. So it's definitely, from a user perspective, definitely an unsolved problem. So it's one that we're not trying to solve, but we're trying to help make a bit easier, and help to kind of make it a little bit more user-friendly, more usable, and at least give people some advice. So what we're trying to do, reduce the bottlenecks for clear guidance, for data movement, provide some clear guidance, document what tools are available where, if you want to move data from one place to the other, do they both have the tool that you want to use installed, or is the user expected to spend, a few hours trying to work out how to use, for example, Globus, and then find out Globus isn't available on site? So if we've got some sort of matrix that describes that for users, that's already one step of the way ahead, isn't it? It's that sort of thing. We want to perform testing and benchmarking to set performance expectations, facilitate this researcher-led large-scale distributed data movement. The idea being it's researcher-led. The researcher should just be able to go ahead and do it. They shouldn't have to submit lots of help desk tickets and wait for a long time for responses and that sort of thing. They should just be able to get in there and get stuff moving. So we've got four main use cases as part of this. One is the LSST Vera Rubin telescope. That's that thing at the top left, stolen from. I can't remember where I got. No, I've got all of these from the project websites. So yeah, from the project websites themselves. So that's LSST. Then there's UKAA with their fusion stuff, looking at moving data right across the Atlantic. And engaging with the US IRI, which is kind of similar to IRIS, but without the S. Then there's Square Kilometre Array, SKA, and data movement into and around the UK of these multi-terabyte data sets. And then there's the Virgo consortium, which heavily use DIRAC resources, transferring large cosmology data sets, simulation data sets from production sites to analysis sites, and that sort of thing. So they're the four use cases that we're going to be looking at. And these are fairly diverse use cases, fairly different ways of doing things. And we hope that by looking at these, we'll cover a lot of the cases that people will want to be looking at when they move their data. we've decided to look at a number of different technologies to investigate. You know, are these set up at different sites? How easy are they to set up at sites? And you know, what do we do if they're not set up at sites and that sort of thing? So there's there, File Transfer Service 3, Rusio, Globus, Arclone, S3, list of different sites where we said, this is copied straight from the proposal, where we said we would do stuff. This may change as the project evolves and we find out it's easier or harder than we thought it was to do these things. But the idea is to have kind of be able to connect these different sites and experiment at scale doing this data transfer. So the actions that we need to take, we want to deploy these test installations of data transfer tools at the multiple sites, implement proof of concepts, provide guidance, repeatable benchmarks, compare the 4 different, I think it was 5, different transfer technologies, workflow integration. How does this work? Can we integrate that with batch schedulers? You know, can we do stuff that means users, from a user perspective, something easy for users to do, that once their data has arrived or the right amount of data has arrived, they can actually start their jobs going in their batch schedulers and that sort of thing, stage data out automatically, all that sort of, all the stuff that we need to do to help users. And we also look at the sustainability aspects in terms of, you know, what's the long-term future for data movement beyond the scope of this project. So once this project stops at the end of July, I think it is, you know, how this good stuff can continue. And then looking at, you know, upfront lifetime costs. Is there vendor lock-in associated with this? If you're paying subscriptions, for example, and your source of funding you're paying those expires, what happens then? Standards, compliance, all that sort of stuff to make this work over long periods of time. Training materials, we want to make them available online, of course. We're planning to have a data transfer workshop at HPC Days 2026 in June this year. Yeah, June. Looking at some of these problems, these aspects of data transfer. We have a governance, because it's one of the pillars. We have a governance aspects of this. We've got obviously users connecting to different accounts at different sites, transferring data between them. How do you ensure that data, that access is legitimate? How do you ensure that the purpose they're doing it for is also legitimate? Just because they've got access to different accounts at different sites doesn't mean they should be necessarily transferring data between those sites. How do you ensure that data transfer is secure as it needs to be? If you're transferring, you know, cosmology data, you might not care if anyone else reads it. But if you're transferring fusion data, you might care more about that. And if you're transferring medical data, you would definitely care more about that. So correct access permissions, appropriate what's being done. And we also have a lightweight management board within the project to help govern it, to help stuff keep moving. And as part of this, we want to look at the sustained business model. So how do we make sure that data management, data movement remains sustainable after the project? What minimum subscription levels need to be paid to services such as Globus? If you need to pay anything, you know, how important are the paid tiers compared with free tiers and so on? So key benefits for this: improved user accessibility, enhanced data access, expertise and experience in sharing all that, upskilling technical teams. That's the key thing here. Looking at giving these technical teams at different sites across the UK the kind of experience of using these different and installing these different technologies, and also the users, and then federating the knowledge in data sharing. So that's kind of the again directly from the proposal, the kind of how the project is set out, the sorts of stuff we're going to do, and user survey, technology assessment in there as well, looking at advising on best practices. And there we go. Thank you.